I'm joined now by Declan Fennell from Board BIA and John Brooks from the ICSA to discuss, to take part in our sheep panel discussion. And John, if I can start with you, one of the most topical issues at the moment faced in the sheep sector has been the proposed mandatory extension of the EID, the electronic identification tagging, to all sheep. It has caused a lot of concern out there among sheep farmers in recent months since the announcement. Now, originally it was meant to come in October. It's been pushed back to June. What's the feeling on the ground at the moment?
Well, Claire, look, what I suppose the big feeling is it's the cost of it. You know what I mean? It's down to cost. It's taken a significant part of our income. ICSA done the maths on this, and going on Teagasc's figures, there's approximately €14 profit out of a lowland lamb, and this tag is going to add an extra euro cost to that lamb that's going to the meat plant. That's equivalent of a 7% reduction in my income and of all the sheep farmer incomes in Ireland across the board. So I suppose, look, per se, it's down to cost. You know, if we don't feel we should have to pay for this, if the market requires it, the market should pay for it. You know, it shouldn't be coming out of our pockets. We already have a platter of levies, you know, deductions. We have Board BIA here beside me. We have, veterinary levies. We have EIF levies, EU levies. And look, what sheep farmers just see this as another levy just foisted upon them, and they don't see any obvious gain to it. And if it wasn't a cost, there'd be no problem with it. But I mean, 7% is a bit too much to be taken from your income. And I suppose if you've done the maths for the hill sheep farmer, it would be significantly worse than more than 7%.
Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Michael Creed, stated that this will increase transparency and increase assurance for, as you mentioned, markets elsewhere. Do you see a possible advantage there?
Well, when you drill down through that theory, it doesn't matter what traceability you have on the sheep before slaughter. It doesn't matter what kind of a tag you have. First of all, the EID tag and the conventional tag that we use at the moment, they both contain the same information. The only difference is that the new EID tag, which costs significantly more, in general it can be read with a reader, electronic reader. But when the lamb is slaughtered, the dream ends there. You're down to batch traceability after that, regardless of what type of tag is in his ear beforehand. So I mean, we can't see it significantly improving traceability. It may help where there's mixed batches going in, but I mean, all these tags are readable, as it stands. It might help, but it's going for the guy who has, and the vast majority of people, farmers out there, they rear the lambs in their own farm, and the lambs are brought to slaughter when they're fit. It goes directly to the meat plant. The tag is about a half an hour in the lamb's ear, maybe an hour in the lamb's ear. The lamb is slaughtered, the tag head is cut off, and the tag is dumped. And now, as I say, an extra euro more for that. I can't see it, or neither can the sheep farmers of Ireland see how that can significantly improve the traceability.
Declan, I'll bring you in on that. Does EID tagging on all sheep make sense?
The answer is, I think, yes. I think it's a logical step in terms of, I suppose there are two key benefits I would look at EID, and maybe just the outset. Obviously, there's a period of transition and change, and that brings uncertainty. But I think the ultimate goal and aim of EID is to maybe, number one is have a better system of traceability. Number two, and I think really a key part of the debate is, it is the opportunity to bring efficiencies into the system as well, in terms of EID as a tool to monitor and track the improvement of the flock. But when I look at it from a market perspective, and I'd say, okay, Ireland had a derogation on EID for the last number of years. Our closest competitors, be it the UK or in France or in Spain, are working on a system of EID. And in terms of markets, markets are becoming more, let's say, requiring demands or requiring the evidence to say that we're producing it to the best possible systems of standards. And even in the last week, in the last fortnight, we've had US people in. This week only, we brought in a group of Chinese government officials, came in there on Sunday and spent all day with them on Monday in the department and in Board BIA. They came down to Ploughing on Tuesday. But the one thing they keep coming back to is, they want the evidence, they want the proof. So when they're asking about our systems of our grass-based production, or we're talking about quality assurance or systems of traceability, they're looking for the evidence and they're looking for the proof. And I think EID gives us that sort of opportunity to have a better system, a more robust system of having traceability within the sheep sector. I see the challenges from a producer because it is a cost, but you know, we should certainly explore what are the benefits of EID beyond new markets and existing markets, beyond building our reputation and proving that we're producing food to the best possible standard. But look at EID as also as a tool of how it sort of generates better farm efficiencies. And you look at an example of Teagasc have the Better Farm programme. EID has been a feature of that, and I think we should look at what those Better Farm programs done and try and put in some measurement or some sort of study to see what were the benefits of EID that may be through flock improvement, better monitoring of live weight gain, etc. So there's a lot of benefits to it. I think we're catching up with our competitors. Our competitors have it. So I think it's something that we need to look at and embrace.
Do you think it's right and fair that the producer, that the farmer foots the bill for it?
In where EID has been phased in different member states, there have been different systems of subsidising it, and that's it. Individual member states have managed that. There has got to a stage where farmers have covered the cost on it, and probably the one thing is, and maybe the energy we should be putting in is, how do we make those tags, you know, can those tags be purchased at a more competitive price? It is, and John is right, it's a significant investment. But number one, can we find a more cost-effective way? Is there a cheaper way of getting a better price? But then number two is, let's look at the value, and I would say is, rather than putting a tag into an animal the morning or the day before it going to the factory, if that tag is going in at birth and maximising, remember, electronic identification is there to identify, but it is also capturing a huge amount of data. And when you speak to some sheep farmers who are using EID and ask them, would they go back? They'll sort of say, they'll pause, they'll think about it, but they'll certainly say is, well, I have seen the benefit of what EID have done for my system of sheep farming.
John, would you like to come in on that?
A couple of points there, you know, Declan or Claire. You know, the bottom line is cost. You know, we want to see a benefit from it, and we're not convinced, or 34,000 sheep farmers out there aren't convinced it's going to be a benefit from this. The second point is, we met with the European officials responsible for, you know, food safety and tagging and traceability in the last fortnight, and they said to us that they, as recently as 2015, they fully supported across the EU the full support for the system that was there, the irrigation that was in place, and they fully supported that irrigation. So there was no question of any pressure from the EU for us to change. It goes back again, Claire, that, you know, we don't believe we're going to get a return for this investment. If the investment is covered, if the market requires it, and first of all, we don't believe, we're not remain to be convinced that there's going to be a whole new platter of markets opened up, you know, that's going to go on EID, because it still goes back to the same point. The weak link in our traceability system, the weak link is after the lamb is slaughtered. That's the weak link. We have a very robust system before the lamb is slaughtered. Okay, I do agree, EID will make it more robust, but it still will have to do absolutely nothing for the weak link, and that's after the lamb is slaughtered. And you're down to batch traceability. At best, we had an example of the pork a number of years ago there. All the pork had to be withdrawn from the marketplace. Now, we don't want to envisage that. We'd hope that would never happen. But goes back again, if the market wants and requires EID tagging, we should be paid for it. We cannot absorb this cost. It's just too many. It's just one step too far to have to absorb another cost.
Declan, did you want to come in on that?
Just on the point in terms of the weak link is you know, at a factory level, I would dispute that and sort of say is an Ireland's system of traceability, and we have veterinary inspectors in factory on the lairage and on the line. Their job and the job of processors is about ensuring that we have systems and processes and procedures for control. And I would disagree and sort of say it's a weak link. The most important thing, we're in the food business. And when something goes wrong, you have a fail-proof system to say you identify the problem, you isolate the problem, you withdraw the problem. on the processing side, and the Department of the Competent Authority who manage that and are quite rigorous in that, have a strong system. On a farm level, I would sort of say is we have to continue to improve our systems of traceability. EID does give us that sort of tool. And one thing to say is that our competitors are moving as well. And I give you one example. The US market is a market that we're eyeing up as an opportunity. It's taken us time to secure market access, and hopefully that will come soon. But the biggest exporter of sheep meat into the US is Australia. They export about 75%, or 75% of US what they import is coming from Australia. The interesting thing is, in the state of Victoria, they produced about 15 million sheep. They have phased in EID since 2017. So in the global marketplace, the investment, the infrastructure, the ambition is being put in there to start putting in better systems. So I think I hear what John says, but certainly we've got to move. We've got to be progressive.
On your ambition that you mentioned there for the US, Declan, I know you're saying that you're hoping for sheep meat access, but even on the beef side, it hasn't been hugely successful so far. So how can you be certain that there would be success on the sheep front?
I believe personally, in terms of the beef, it's been influenced by the domestic supply of US beef and prices going up and down. We're in a very competitive marketplace. On the lamb side, I think it's a bit different. The number one, the US is only 45% self-sufficient in lamb. So they have a significant import requirement of about 120,000 tonnes. The vast majority of that is coming from New Zealand, the balance from Australia, and the balance from New Zealand. But Irish lamb, and we've done some good research in terms of consumer trade research, Irish lamb resonates particularly strong. There's a very strong identity when US people think about Ireland. The image of Ireland and lamb is very strong, and I believe that there's an opportunity. I think there's sort of select key accounts that we need to look at. But I do think when we do get market access into the US, the one thing that they will ask for is, and they've been over already last September, the USDA is, and one thing is that we're looking for is our systems and traceability.
John, do you think that there's that much possibility in the US? And also, I know you had a lot of protests already this year on this issue. Are you going to plan further protests in the run-up to the introduction of EID in next June?
First of all, I just finished on the EID. I just said this to finish on the EID. We could talk about it all day. Our pork, our beef, and our poultry trade, all over the world. And why not? Because it's a premium product. And neither of these three products has EID as mandatory. So it's very strange. It's beyond belief that the market will demand EID in lamb and not demand it in pork, poultry, or beef. But to go on, as Declan, I do agree with Declan. There are markets out there. They might be a bit far away, but we have to explore every market. There's the turmoil coming down the road. There's Brexit coming down the road. And Ireland is, and will continue to be a food exporting nation. We have to export 90% of our food. So, we rely on the likes of Bord Bia and Declan, to look at all the markets all over the world and promote our lamb. And I've no doubt, but there are markets out there that's not being explored at the moment, or that's potentially huge, like you have China and all that. You have the biggest per capita in the world of millionaires living in China, and all the hotel industry and that sort of stuff. And Ireland has a good food name, and it's a must for Irish farmers. But there is another problem, and unfortunately it's known from the processing industry here today, in the sense that all these markets are great on paper and look well, but the farmers on the ground aren't getting a return. Our prices now for sheep meat are on the floor, and beef as well. And we hear of prices, for example, in one part of Australia at the moment of being €8 a kilo. The problem we face here is, regardless of these markets, the industry here will pay as little as possible.
I'm afraid I have to leave it